Hello everyone, today we're diving into a thrilling and unexpected story. Have you ever imagined being targeted by hidden enemies? And what would happen if you discovered that the person you love the most has become the target of a criminal plot? Can James protect Diep, the one he loves, from these dangerous people? What perilous situations will these criminal schemes push them into? Will they be able to overcome these challenges and uncover the truth behind everything? Join us for this suspenseful and dramatic story. Do you think James can win the battle against these criminal forces? Will Diep be strong enough to face the dangers and not let anything destroy her happiness? Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more captivating stories to come. James, an ambitious and talented CEO, led a company that was rapidly growing. His company had always been a leader in its industry, but the fierce competition from rivals had made the situation more tense than ever. One of James' biggest competitors was a large corporation that had long desired to dominate the market and find ways to push James out of the game. The battle between the two companies had escalated and showed no signs of cooling down. The rival company, with its powerful resources and ambitious strategy, had relentlessly tried to undermine James' reputation. They spread false information, even infiltrating some of James' business relationships, causing turmoil within his company. Although James remained resolute, refusing to let outside forces dictate his decisions, he couldn't ignore the mounting pressure. Some people within his company began to change their attitudes, and even some shady individuals had started collaborating with the competitor, making the situation even harder. In a recent crucial meeting, James clashed with shareholders. Every decision he made was questioned, and the discontent among some shareholders began to grow into harsh criticism. Meanwhile, the rival company launched a full-scale campaign to attack James' reputation, constantly forcing him to face baseless accusations. James felt like everything he had worked for was slipping away, but he remained determined not to back down, even though he knew this battle might not end well. Despite the growing opposition from his rivals, James couldn't stop believing in what he had built. However, the day after an important meeting, while driving home after a long day at work, he had no idea that a sinister plot was being carried out to remove him from his position. A black car with no license plates had been tailing James' vehicle since he left the office, following him down a quiet stretch of road. His mind was still preoccupied with company decisions when the car suddenly accelerated and rammed into his vehicle. The collision was so sudden that James didn't have time to react. In an instant, everything around him became chaotic. The first sensation was a violent jolt into the side of the car, causing James to lose control of the steering wheel. He heard the screeching of metal and the violent crash, feeling as if his car was twisting and spinning out of control. The sound of glass shattering and the screeching of tires as the car flipped on the road filled the air. James was thrown out of the vehicle, his body slamming into a fence on the side of the road. He felt an intense pain radiating throughout his body, from his back to his head, but everything began to blur. In the final moments before he lost consciousness, the image of the black car speeding away, leaving no trace, haunted him. James couldn't understand what had just happened. He only knew that this was no ordinary accident. The pain and dizziness made it hard for him to breathe, and his vision started to fade. His whole body seemed to sink into darkness, with blurry flashes of light and surrounding noise blending together, creating an ambiguous space. He felt a chilling cold surrounding him but couldn't escape the dazed state he was in. Half-conscious, he thought of his loved ones, and first and foremost, Diep, the woman he always loved. Would she know about this? Would she be okay? These questions echoed in James' mind, but then everything gradually dissolved into the darkness. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Diep was preparing dinner at home when she suddenly received an urgent call from the hospital. She couldn't fully understand what was happening, but a sense of dread quickly overwhelmed her. She rushed to the hospital immediately. Her heart was heavy thinking of James, the man she had always trusted and stood by through thick and thin. When she entered the hospital, everything seemed to slow down, with every passing second feeling like an eternity. She just hoped that James would be safe and that he wouldn't have to endure any more pain. Diep sensed something was wrong the moment she heard the phone call. The voice on the other end was not vague but full of anxiety and urgency. When she heard about James, she couldn't suppress the surge of worry that overwhelmed her. Her hands trembled, and a choking sensation gripped her throat. Despite the thousands of questions racing through her mind, one thing was clear: James. She knew he had been in a serious accident, and she couldn't let him face it alone. In that moment, everything around her seemed to blur. She didn't pay attention to what she was doing, only focused on grabbing what she needed and rushing out of the house. In her mind, there was only James, the man she had given her heart to, the man she had always trusted. She imagined him lying still in the hospital, possibly enduring unbearable pain, but the greatest pain for her was the thought that she couldn't do anything to ease it. As she stepped into the car, her hands shook when she grabbed the steering wheel, her mind tangled in worry. She tried to drive, but her thoughts were consumed by the image of James in the hospital, possibly in agony. She couldn't bear to think that this could be the last time she would see him, that she might lose him forever. Although she hoped everything would turn out fine, the fear still clung to her. Her heart raced, cold sweat trickled down her forehead as the car sped through the dark streets. She couldn't think of anything else but James. Every turn of the wheel felt like the beating of her own heart, frantic and full of anxiety. Memories of them together flooded her mind, moments of happiness when they were together, late-night conversations, the sweet words they had exchanged. She remembered how James had always cared for her, protected her from all the hardships of life, and now she had to be the one to care for him in his weakest moment. When she arrived at the hospital, she didn't know how she had driven there, only that, in an instant, she was standing in front of the emergency room. Everything seemed to stop for a moment, and she couldn't help but tremble as she saw nurses and doctors rushing by. A sense of unease overwhelmed her, and she couldn't describe the fear tightening her chest. Diep took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions, and then walked inside. Every step felt slower, as if the hospital's cold walls surrounded her, stretching every second. When she saw James lying motionless on the hospital bed, her heart tightened. Although his injuries weren't life-threatening, just seeing him there, vulnerable and weak, made her feel a pang of pain in her chest. In that moment, she just wanted to rush to his side, hold his hand, and promise him everything would be okay, that she wouldn't let him suffer alone. Diep slowly approached his bed, sitting beside him and gently taking his hand. The warmth of her touch reached his hand, a silent promise that she would never leave his side. He stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open, still clouded from the pain. He looked at her, his gaze filled with surprise and concern. "Why are you here?" James whispered, his voice hoarse from the pain. "You don't need to worry about me, everything will be fine." Diep shook her head gently, running her fingers through his hair and replying, "You don't have to worry about me, James. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him, her eyes filled with determination, refusing to let fear take over. She knew she had to be strong, not only for James but also for herself and for their future together. When the doctor entered, Diep barely noticed his presence. She only cared about James recovering quickly, and she didn't stop praying for him. At that moment, all her thoughts were consumed by how she could help him overcome the pain, how she could help him become strong again, like he once was. The worries about the company, the conflicts at work, didn't matter anymore. James was her everything. She stayed there, holding his hand, not saying anything more, just silently waiting for time to pass. In this moment, it was just the two of them, no distractions from the busy world outside or the challenges they faced. Only love and the deep care they had for each other. She wouldn't leave him, never. Although James was slowly recovering from the accident, he could not shake the anxiety about the criminals behind the assassination attempt. The days following the accident were filled with physical pain and exhaustion, but his mind was consumed with thoughts of his enemies. Despite the doctors assuring him that he had survived the worst and would fully recover, the nightmares still haunted him every night, making him fear that he might not survive to protect Diep. James knew all too well that the people behind the accident were not ones to let things go easily. They were operatives of a criminal organization, some of whom he had clashed with before in his work. Although he wasn't entirely sure of everything, he knew that eliminating him was just a part of a much larger plan. What worried him even more was Diep's safety. She was his one vulnerability, the only person they could target to pressure him into complying with their demands. Diep had always been the one he loved and wanted to protect above all else. She had been there for him through thick and thin, sharing in the hardships of work and life. But now, James felt that he was the one putting her in danger. He couldn't help but think that the criminals might target her to force him to give in to their wishes. In his mind, he repeatedly saw horrific images of Diep being threatened or even hurt, making it impossible for him to be at peace. One evening, as James lay resting in the hospital, he found himself unable to sleep. The worry gnawed at him relentlessly. He knew that even though his body was healing, he could not stop thinking about the danger Diep was in. He remembered past confrontations with rivals in business, where he had fought hard to maintain control. But this fear, the fear for her safety, was unlike any he had ever felt before. He feared the criminals might come for her, and he wouldn't be able to stop them. Diep can't protect herself from these people, James whispered, his face grim. If they come for her, I won't be able to stop them. He couldn't bear the thought of her being hurt because of him. He knew that he had to do something to protect her, but in his current state, he felt powerless. Although the doctors had cleared him to leave the hospital, he could not do so without worrying about Diep's safety. He needed to protect her before it was too late. The next day, when Diep arrived at the hospital to take care of him, James could no longer contain his concerns. Although she always appeared strong, he knew she was just as anxious as he was. Her eyes, though trying to smile, were clearly tired and filled with worry. James looked at her and felt his heart tighten with love and fear. "Diep, you need to be careful," James said, his voice low and serious. "I can't stand to see you get hurt. These people won't hesitate to harm us. You need to be with someone you trust." Diep looked at him, her eyes filled with anxiety. "James, you're overthinking it. I'll be fine. I can protect myself." But James couldn't accept that. He knew that in her current state, she wouldn't stand a chance against the criminals. They had a plan, and he couldn't let her become an unintentional target. He had to do something, even if it meant acting while still not fully recovered. "I won't let you be in danger, Diep. I thought about this all night. You need to go somewhere safe, away from places where there could be danger. I can't let you suffer because of me anymore." Diep didn't know what to say. She looked at him, her heart full of compassion, but also sensing his determination. She knew James wasn't the type of person to give up on the ones he loved, and that only made her worry more. She couldn't bear the thought of leaving him, but she also knew how serious the threat was. "James, I can't leave. I need to be here with you," Diep said firmly, though her eyes betrayed the fear she felt. In the days that followed, James couldn't stop thinking about how to protect Diep. He knew that although his body was recovering, there were still too many dangers ahead. He couldn't stop worrying about her, and he would never forgive himself if anything happened to her. He had to find a way to keep her safe, no matter the cost. This story offers a thrilling and emotional journey that keeps the reader hooked with every twist and turn. The tension not only arises from the criminal schemes but also from the deep emotional bond between James and Diep. James, despite his strength and resilience, faces his greatest fear, the safety of the person he loves. This makes the audience not only captivated by the suspenseful events but also deeply empathetic toward the characters. Their relationship, with its challenges and sacrifices, makes the story meaningful and profound. Love is not just about sharing happiness but also about protecting each other from danger, and this story clearly conveys that message. Beyond the intense moments, the story makes the viewer reflect on the important values in life, such as love, sacrifice, and protecting loved ones. With its unexpected twists and gripping moments, this story will undoubtedly leave a lasting impression on the audience.